Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on advancing responsible gaming through collaboration and technology. I'm Cait DeBaun, Vice President of Strategic Communications and Responsibility at the American Gaming Association. Thanks so much for joining us today for our second webinar during our first ever Responsible Gaming Education Month. I continue to be impressed by the active engagement across all parts of the industry this month and want to share my deep appreciation for all of your efforts to make our first month-long observance a success. Before we came live, the panelists and I were chatting about it, and it's really rewarding to see how the industry quickly adapted to this month-long celebration and the priorities that responsible gaming has for our industry day in and day out. Gaming's future, as we all know, is being shaped by new technology. Online gaming and mobile betting are the fastest growing segments of the industry. And while technology does present some new risks, it also creates new opportunities. Innovations give consumers more tools to play responsibly, and they enable our operators and our suppliers and even regulators and others in the industry to understand how players are behaving and interacting with our products and help us enhance foundational commitments to RG and take them to the next level. So today we'll talk about what technology looks like and how it applies to gaming. We'll talk about collaboration and how other modernizations are helping advance responsible gaming and tools available for those playing today. So I'm delighted to have our panelists. Let me briefly introduce them. Jaime Costello, Director of Programs at the National Council on Problem Gambling. She oversees the planning, development, and evaluation of NCPG programs. She's an experienced addiction and public health professional and previously served on the New York Council on Problem Gambling. Welcome, Jaime.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. Charmaine Hogan, Head of Regulatory Affairs at Playtech. She's an industry veteran and has collaborated with the European Commission for 8 years on gaming policy and gaming studies. Welcome, Charmaine.
Thank you very much.
And last but certainly not least, Chrissy Thurman, Director of Responsible Gaming at DraftKings, where she's leading the expansion of its responsible gaming framework. Previously, Chrissy supported the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling and worked for Harvard Medical School, including its division on addiction. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you for having me.
And I believe you worked at the council before they changed names. I know they have a new name, so want to recognize
Yes, it's the Mass Counseling on Gambling and Health.
Yes.
So that's right. Yes, thank you.
Hi, Marlene.
Shout out, Marlene. Hello.
Welcome to everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes walking through this discussion and want it to be a collaborative one, as that's part of our conversation. So feel free to jump in and share your thoughts as we get into it. And there is the opportunity to submit questions on the side of your screen. I'll be looking at those to see how we can integrate them into our conversation today. So let's get to it with an open question for the panel. How would you describe the state of RG today? And as the gaming environment evolves, what are the biggest challenges or opportunities that we're facing with RG? And I'll kick it over to Chrissy to start that off.
Thanks, Cait. At first, I'm just going to start off by commending you and the AGA for an unbelievable month. We were talking, my team has embraced Responsible Gaming Education Month in a way that makes me so proud to be in the space that we're in. We have had a tremendous outpouring of interaction within our organization. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for that, and remiss if I didn't thank the Responsible Gaming team, Julie, Zach, and Nick, and Suzanne, who've just gone out of their way. So with that said, thank you for that question. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. And I really, one of the things that I'm particularly focused on is collaboration and collaborative efforts in this space. I think more than ever, we are seeing the dialogue around responsible gaming become more inclusive. And I think that the barriers are being dropped down and people are listening, engaging more. People are really taking the opportunity to see how you can incorporate various aspects of technology, information dissemination, tools, resources, et cetera, into a program, whether it be for an advocacy group or for an operator. And so I'm really thrilled to see what's been going on in the space.
That's right. I think collaboration is how you get such unique voices like we have today having this conversation. And most industries, you wouldn't see this group of people or these representations come together to have a conversation about responsible gaming. But that's inherent to how we make this better. Jaime, curious your thoughts. I know you're newer to the national level, and obviously in the deep end on the helpline. So what's your perspective on where we are today and kind of how collaboration can drive that?
I think, as a comparison, I think we're at like that teenager position, right? Where we've all sort of figured out where we're at on our own, and we're starting to come together and figure out how we can work together, and how all of those voices, although they're different opinions and different voices and different perspectives, how they come together to add to such a great thing. And so I think it's an exciting time for RG, growing, learning. We're moving from just a PR sort of RG relationship, and we're really digging a little bit deeper to grow into that as a field and as a nation. So I think that all of the collaboration has afforded us the opportunity to really think outside the box, to help people who are struggling and to help prevent, because responsible gambling is prevention. It's intervention, but it's also prevention. So I think it's a really exciting time, and we're all just kind of figuring out how to navigate all of those relationships and groups and collaborations. So it's super exciting.
That's right. I think that the distinction of RG as prevention is something that I hope we have more of a conversation about moving forward. And it's something I talk with Dr. Shatley at UNLV about a lot. She's really focused on that. There's a spectrum here, and we all need to understand the roles we play and how they complement each other, and how that can help in the end players have a safer gambling experience. Charmaine, you've obviously been in the EU industry for a while and are continuing to grow in the US. So would love to hear your perspective on the state of RG today here in the US, and kind of how your perspective in the EU gives you a different lens in that way.
Definitely. First of all, I'd like to join in thanking you for all you've done for this month and for us, because we only joined earlier this year, and it's been a great experience so far. I've really, really enjoyed it and wanting to get even more into it. So having a whole responsible gambling month has been excellent. Definitely, I mean, it's fundamental. This collaboration is fundamental, but also I would add, why is it fundamental and why is it key? I think, yes, coming from sort of with a European mindset, if you like, where most of us know the trends that have kicked in over there. As an industry, we're constantly under some type of scrutiny, whether it's the media or policymakers, and we've seen what's happened in European markets when restrictions ensued. So we should be out there as an industry collaborating more, even amongst trade bodies, with regulators, proactively, not because rules are forcing us to do so. And I think in the US we have a fantastic opportunity, because state by state there's more opportunities, new markets, so to say, opening up, upcoming regulations. So you have that opportunity to go in early on, and you take responsible gambling along with you on that journey, not an afterthought. Dare I say, markets, it has been an afterthought. Oh, let's do something more for the players. I think here the opportunity is fantastic, and there is this willingness to engage. There's this excitement to do more about responsible gambling, and certainly we have the technology, we have the data to be able to move forward. We mentioned problem gamblers, we mentioned prevention. There's also detection. There's so much we can do, and this is what we will talk about. I think there's a really timely moment for this right now.
It's almost like we're on the roller coaster climb, where we get up there and as we
want to keep going upwards,
exactly.
not the slope we've seen in European markets. That's kind of my hope.
Exactly. We all know that RG is a fundamental commitment to our industry, and that's why we're trying to use the latest research and best practices and learnings from player behavior to promote RG. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think one place that there's been tremendous collaboration and an emphasis over the last year especially has been around the helpline. So Jaime, I'd love to hear from you. What has the work been like since you've jumped into that with 2 feet, 2 arms, the whole body? What have you learned, and what does the change mean in terms of helpline modernization?
Yeah, so I tried to dip my toe in. That didn't work. So I just went right off the diving board and jumped in head first. It's been a lot. It's been overwhelming, but it's also been really exciting. I think transitioning from the existing 522-4700 to 1-800-GAMBLER, which is much more recognizable and more easy to remember for folks who are in need, has been an exciting time, but it's been a challenge. I think change is hard for a lot of people, even those who are excited about change. I think there's that too. But I think what it means is that we can all come together around a common cause. And I think that's what I've been able to witness and talk to people about. It's not the large group presentations. It's not the big publications. It's those one-on-one conversations that make such a difference in getting people to the help that they need. And so everybody coming together over the helpline modernization has been really exciting. We are shifting all of the phone calls to 1-800-GAMBLER. The text systems have not been transitioned over yet, so we're currently working on those. And I think one of the really cool things is sometimes you get that resistance as an outsider's perspective, where you expect resistance. But again, when you have those one-on-one conversations, when I can call somebody like Christine, or I can call a regulator in this state and say, hey, what do you think about this? And we can have those conversations to come to a compromise. And I think that goes back to Christine pointing out in the beginning, the collaboration, and Cait talking about the collaboration is really, in the end, we all want the same thing. We all want players who are struggling to get the help that they need. At the end of the day, it might look different for all of us. We might be coming at it with different colored glasses on. But at the end of the day, that's what we all want. And so I think we're getting there. I think a lot of states have accepted the use or are willing to discuss the use of 1-800-GAMBLER and a common number, at least in national and multi-state advertisements, which is really exciting because the market is changing. There's no longer brick and mortar casinos, as you all know. And so everything online is accessible everywhere. So being able to help players in that way to get them all to the same point so they can get the help that they need has just been, it's been rewarding to have those conversations and build those relationships with folks. It's been a whopping 5 months, so far so good.
You rock, Jaime. You rock.
I'm still here, so it must be going well.
It's been an interesting, the helpline has been a really cool thing from my perspective because it came to me from our members. We had a few members come and say, hey, this is something that we can change that will deliver better experiences for those who need help. And so what can the AGA do? And that's kind of the road we took. So Chrissy, I'd love to hear why that was so important to you. I think at this point we have a dozen, if not more, states that allow for 1-800-GAMBLER or national number in multi-state or national advertising, which is a huge win from where we were. So I'd love to hear just why was that important for DraftKings and your peers?
Yeah, I think, Jaime, kudos. It has been so phenomenal to watch this transition. And I think part of what has been so fantastic is that the number 1-800-GAMBLER is so recognizable, as Jaime alluded to, and it just makes sense. And so it allows us to provide something that is absolutely recognizable, that can be larger, so we're not kind of so buried down in disclaimers, so that we can get the information out there, that we can have it that on the screen so people can see it, people can recognize it, people know it's there. And I think it's I think it's going to be even a more tremendous benefit to people as it becomes the number out there. But I'd also like to piggyback on what Jaime was saying. I think that is the fact that has happened in a fairly short order is so impressive. But what I also think is really impressive is that what technology allows us to do is provide more resources, more information, more contacts, not only just with the 800 number, but to the state councils where people reside. We can get that information out to people. We can provide information on helplines or GA information, or we can provide a lot more resources online, not only just for the people who are struggling, but also resources like how to play the games, how do you engage with these products, what does it mean, do you know the odds, how do you read a lineup? So I think one of the fabulous opportunities here as well is that we have a breadth and a reach now we can put the information out there, we can make it accessible, we can make it so that people want to engage with it, so fun and interesting. And I think things working collaboratively with the NCPG on things like that, I think there are so many things we can continue to do, but I personally think this was just one of the I'm so glad, Jaime, you were at the helm when you came in to take it, because it really is, it was a big rock to get up the hill, and it's moving, and it's very impressive. And, like I said, we're really proud to be able to kind of be part of that dialogue.
Yeah. For a second, I just want to comment on Christine. You mentioned online, and there's the ability to get so many more tools out and to educate. I think there's also the element of anonymity online, which can be a barrier to responsible gambling and player protection, but it can also be a barrier buster, if you will, for people looking for help, right? I might not be likely to pick up a brochure at a store or at a treatment center or on the back of a bathroom stall even, but online, I can look at those tools and utilize those tools without you knowing. And I think that's where we get with a lot of people who are struggling with gambling related problems. They're not ready to admit it publicly, but they're kind of exploring that internally, or families and friends are exploring that internally. And that using technology gives them the ability to do that in a space that they're comfortable in. If they're gambling online, that means they're comfortable in that environment. So I think the technology really affords us that opportunity too.
That's right. The flip side of that,
totally agree,
that came up in our last webinar about how you're, anonymous in that I don't know what you're doing in that regard, but operators and, vendors and suppliers know exactly what your behavior looks like and are starting to use that technology to equip you with more tools and resources and kind of intervention light to say, hey, can we talk about this? Did you, this is unusual behavior. Charmaine, I'd love to hear from you on, how does that look like in what Playtech is offering? What are kind of the lessons learned you've seen as you've grown, that insight there?
If I stick to the helpline specifically, I would say this is a very clear, tangible example when we say let's be proactive as an industry. Let's show that we want to do more than just talk about commitments and principles. This is a really tangible one, and it's no mean feat. I mean, again, if I look at think of European markets and trying to get together across European markets where each country has its own specific set of rules to come together to try to do something common, which is tangible, took a lot of effort, and even there is just what we would call soft law when it comes to consumer protection. You set the baselines, but then it's up to each and every state to uptake those. And here you're talking about something just being rolled out state by state, and also creating the awareness about it. But as you said, being able to pick up the phone and talk about the issue or question, not just because you've had a problem, but because you want to be able to make an informed choice, you want to be able to understand more, or perhaps you feel that you might be feeling that you're showing signs of problematic play. So I think that's a clear example, and technology will continue to allow us to expand, enhance, and deepen, I think, what we do, and it should.
Yeah,
that's great. Chrissy, how are you all at DraftKings using some of that player insight to help, advance RG education and equip players with tools and resources to control and kind of limit their own play?
Yeah, so one of the things in the areas as far as kind of education, I am, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm a firm believer that the best trained workforce in this space will translate to the most informed player base. And I really believe that. People, when they know it and they have responsible gaming in their head, when they're at their jobs, they think about it, right? It becomes part of kind of what they do. So some of the things that I'm really proud of that we've done is we have created education hubs. So before anyone gets on or has to spend money and kind of get engaged in kind of playing with the platform, whichever ones they're on, they can go into an education hub and get step-by-step instructions through tutorials, through videos, through explanations on how to play, how to play the game, how to read the odds, etc. So these education hubs exist, and I think, to Jaime's point, it's again people educating themselves on what they're doing prior to just jumping in with both feet and maybe not knowing exactly what they're doing. And so as far as kind of educating our player base, I think that's really huge. I also think that the opportunity to kind of destigmatize tool usage is extremely important because, we see tools as a wonderful parameter for people to set a play experience that makes the most sense for them. So we really encourage, we have tools, we explain how to use the tools, how to engage with our tools. I think that's really important. And then for those who are having problems and want to just kind of stop playing, we've tool on our site called Bet Blocker, where people can download it. It's completely anonymous, and people can block the sites. They can set an experience for time and certain times of the day, certain times of the month, week, whatever. So I really think that we've been able to embrace the technology and really put an emphasis on education and information, and really just providing it kind of, as Jaime alluded to, just letting people engage with what they know and what they really feel will make will help them make better decisions as they engage with the platforms that they're on.
You mentioned Bet Blocker, and I wonder, how has that kind of gone over with customers? What are you hearing from regulators about that? What has the player kind of experience been there?
Yeah, the thing about Bet Blocker is it's completely anonymous. So we don't have data and metrics on like how many people have used it. What I have heard anecdotally just from people saying, this is a fabulous resource. It allows me to block. It doesn't only block legal sites, it also blocks illegal sites, which I think is fantastic as well. But to Jamie's point there, it does allow people that kind of anonymity to get in and set an experience for themselves. So the feedback that I have received has been very positive, and very much, it's kind of that above and beyond. And one of the things that I really am focusing on at DraftKings is really going just above and beyond just what's required. And so having tools and access to the education hubs and access to our Safer Play portal, et cetera, I think really is a tremendous benefit for people who are either new to this or getting into it and might have some questions, or have been doing it for a while and not even sure exactly kind of how to engage with tools and how to engage in resources that may help them have a better play experience.
That's what's been so rewarding about this role specifically. I've been at the AGA now for 3.5 years. This is my 4th RG week now, month, and the growth in responsible gaming prioritization and practicality. It's not just, it's not a PR thing. I think a lot of people think that's what RG is. And it is, as evidenced by this conversation and the smart people we have talking about this, it is foundational to who we are and how our businesses operate, and something that we continue to grow and advance, because that's how we evolve and sustain our industry. And that's, a point that I always want to drive home, that this is real. It's not something that, somebody wrote a press release about. It's something that we are taking actionable steps to invest in. Charmaine, kind of on the same vein, I'd love to hear more about Playtech Protect. And, what is it? How is it advancing RG? What is, the rollout been in the US, or what does that look like in the future?
Yeah, I was going to focus more, to be honest with you, to talk about what it is we can do with the use of AI for player protection and to detect those signs. Because essentially, Playtech Protect, that's what it is. That sits within Playtech, and we have the software tools that sit within it, and all the engagement center, and how we put together basically scalable solutions. You're looking at your products, your services, and responsible gambling and compliance. But to focus on the use of AI and why I think it's really important, I think underlying element is, what is our constant challenge at the end of the day? It is trying to correctly identify those players who might be experiencing harm, and that is clearly what data, what technology, and what explainable AI helps us to do. You're being able to focus on the individual player. You're being able to look at all types of players and intervene appropriately and accordingly. You're moving away, or allowed to move away, from a one size fits all. So not only the traditional approach, you're adding to that. You're trying to spot those signs of problematic play early on and intervening accordingly. And then, of course, tied to that is being able to have tailored interventions, personalized messages. So again, you can move away from generic messaging to more personalized, non-judgmental. I think that's quite key, because at the end of the day, even if you spot a person who has a problem or is developing a problem or signs of, you don't want to just alarm them and turn them and they turn away. You want to be sure that that player then goes on to get the help that they need. I think that's quite important. So with BadBuddy, essentially, which is part of a key part of Playtech Protect, is our proprietary AI software. It's a software solution to spot those signs of risky play early on. And how does it do that? It's basically on the basis of markers of harm, behavioral markers of harm. We have dozens and dozens of those working in the background. At the end of the day, we're suppliers, so the uptake remains on the operators, but it's a tool that's there. And those markers of harm, I mean, the beauty of it is not simply a scoreboard. It's not like, oh, how much time or money have you spent online? It's looking at the payment systems, the payment methods, fluctuation in the use of that. You're looking at your deposits, your wagers, fluctuations in that. Are you increasing? How often are you increasing? Your frequency, are you chasing losses? Declined deposits, that's quite an important marker of harm. Also at night play, not simply because I'm playing at night, but for example, am I playing later and later? Am I on a roll, basically? These are examples of key markers. So you're looking at those, and that is the list based on individual players. So those markers are looking at each player individually, and that can in turn be given to the operator. This is the list per that. This is what has been flagged. It's like a traffic light system. Yeah, you're right, amber, red, and hopefully don't arrive too frequently at red. But then, of course, the operator can in turn intervene with the player on the basis of the clear flagged problematic play, and that intervention, that messaging, which can be, by the way, in real time, and that again is the beauty of it, so that there's real-time interaction on the basis of the flagged risks. Of it's too much time, the messages accordingly, and then, as I said, in a non-judgmental way. And there is relevance in that, because yes, you're intervening based on really in-depth knowledge of a player's habits, but also, I mean, we've talked a bit, we will talk about even the importance of research and of doing more. And if I give example of 2 trials that we carried out with our operators, for instance, you see that around one of 3 players, when prompted, do go on within an hour to set a deposit limit, for example. Others say that they find real-time messaging more effective than generic messaging. There's a percentage of that. Just an example, and we take the effort to upload those type of what we call trials, our research briefings, on our website, to be able to share those, make available those, whether it's the industry, whether it's the regulator, whether it's treatment centers, etc. And I think that's the beauty of technology. There's this, and you want to continuously be able to improve of that. None of this is set in stone. At the end of the day, you have the human intervention working in the background, the human supervision, I should say, and that's not going to go away. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're making sure that those customers can make better informed choices, and they, before something becomes a problem. And that is where we've talked about it already. Let's move more proactively rather than waiting for rules, to be able to do something to detect and to prevent problem play. So we're not only talking about problem gamblers. I think that's quite relevant.
I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jaime.
I was just going to say, I think that, we can talk about collaboration with partners, but I think what you're talking about, Charmaine, is like the collaboration of technology and systems, and technology working really well with people. I think the AI and the data that you're able to get via online play enables you to take all of those things that we may or may not see on a one-on-one situation with an individual, to try to measure that out. And, we can build it. We can build education. We can build player protection, but it doesn't mean that they'll come, right? And so using that AI partnered with individuals and operators, reaching out, are you okay? Here are some options, here are some tools. And I think the technology also has allowed, and the data, as you mentioned, Charmaine, has really allowed operators to measure the effectiveness of that, which I think at the end of the day is really important. It's a new field, it's new technology, it's all growing. So we're all trying these different things, and we try new things without the research to back that up, because we're building, we're growing, we're, again, in that teenage stage, we're trying to figure it all out. But I think using the data on what actually happens at the end of the day, who's utilizing those tools, how are they being utilized, are they helping people, is really important to making sure that we strengthen the field and keep RG growing in the right direction.
That's exactly right. I think the conversations I have a lot are, the balance between technology and human interaction, the way that we can take what we know from, what we've done right now is take what we know from brick and mortar and bring it online. And now we're starting to get at the point where we need to reverse that. And, what are we learning online that we can, bring into the brick and mortar for a different experience? I think one question that comes up a lot with responsible gaming, and I'm riffing on one of the questions asked by the audience, is this balance between player protection and customer acquisition and customer kind of growth. And I would be curious from each of your perspectives how you manage for that internally. So I think it's a misnomer that you have one without the other, that they compete with each other, kind of player protection and marketing. You can't have one without the other. So I'd be curious, Chrissy, maybe starting with you, how do you instill in your organization that balance of, RG is just as part of this marketing funnel as any other part of our, ability to grow a customer?
Yeah, I think it's such an important point, Cait. And I think one of the things that I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish over the last couple of years is we have a systems-based approach. So everything kind of within the responsible gaming as the nexus of kind of from an RG program, everything kind of filters out into all different stakeholder bases within the organization. And I think it's so important as I go back to the education, what we're really trying to create internally are responsible gaming ambassadors in each area of the internal stakeholder base. So you mentioned marketing and advertising, and we hear it all the time. There are a lot of ads out there. There is a lot that is put out for acquisition of new players, but there's also a lot going on around making sure that people are receiving messaging and making sure that CRMs are sending out consistent message. Our social channels are sending out responsible gaming messages. Our advertising has RG Centric. I'm really proud to say that we have just come out with an RG Centric campaign. We announced it during RGEM, and we're really trying to make sure that we're getting the information out there and letting people know that there is information, that it's that we do pay attention to this. That is, as you said, it's not just this PR thing. It's a part of the infrastructure and the culture of the organization, and I think it's it doesn't happen overnight. So, there's a lot to teach. There's a lot for people to learn and absorb and understand, and then relate it to how it affects them or applies to them in the workplace. But I can tell you, I am so proud of how people have embraced responsible gaming, how people talk about it. We have, I'm biased, but I have a pretty incredible team, and we have, Julie Hines, some of you may know, has created an incredible intranet portal, which is just information, kind of anything anybody wants to know about responsible gaming if they want to educate themselves even further. So I think there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't even aware of. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of the, again, talking of the collaborative spirit, responsible gaming is a collaborative internal effort as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so making sure that all our internal stakeholders are communicating and talking and understanding and realizing the kind of ripple effect they have. And so as far as kind of, the competition, I don't know if it's getting RG messaging out and acquiring new players. I think it's really kind of this coordinated effort that, people can come on board and play, and wherever you are in that journey, you can learn something, you can educate yourself. And if it turns into an area where you may have a problem, there are resources available to you.
That's right. Jaime, Charmaine, anything you want to add on that point?
There's plenty to say, actually, and quite a few touch points from Christine. But I mean, one key element definitely is the internal element. Exactly, there's a lot that is going on, behind the scenes, so to say, and if it's not, it should be going on. And as much as we're out here talking about this amongst ourselves and with our audience, that conversation should be happening internally as well, that you're reaching out to all your different teams. For example, we're a supplier, right, to your product teams. If I mentioned trials and research that we carried out, it's not just about sharing it with the outside world, it's about taking the time internally to talk with the different product teams. At the end of the day, product can also be part and parcel of problematic play. And do we know enough about it? So you go to your product teams and say, listen, here's the responsible gambling angle. Why is it important? Not just because regulations are demanding it, if you like, or because there's scrutiny, but because we can improve on what we do. Is a certain feature on a game necessary? Is it a real fun game, or is it just there to create problems? I mean, on the product you can say so much. But when we say embedded when we say responsible gambling, embedded within the body of a business throughout. And that is also when it comes to the customer acquisition versus the protection of players. It shouldn't be one versus the other. No, because at the end of the day, that would be part and parcel of a short-term view over a long-term view. Somebody dropping out or having to drop out months early on is not sustainable. Why would you want it? You want a player to enjoy their time online, of course, to have fun and not have problems, but you want to have a longer customer journey. Why do you want to have to go out and constantly get customer acquisition? Something is wrong if that is the case, and we should be, mature enough to recognize that and to be able to rectify it. But even I think we've made huge steps as an industry, because even the fact that we're here talking amongst ourselves quite transparent, I think that's really, really key. It wouldn't perhaps happened as much a couple of years back, where we're saying we recognize shortfalls, we're improving them, we recognize that even internally it's an ongoing matter of education, of training, of awareness. So it's quite key.
I think it's a learning, it's a development, it's a growth. And I hear you both saying it has to be part of our culture. It has to be responsible gambling has to be part of every single conversation. And if that means it has to be a conversation when we're talking about marketing and customer acquisition, it has to be a part of the conversation. You don't talk about a balanced diet without talking about fruits and vegetables. You just wouldn't. And so we can't have any conversation in any environment, in any gaming environment, without talking about responsible gambling. It's part of the culture. It should be spoken about in every conversation and considered in every conversation too. Are we making the responsible decision? Charmaine, just like you said, are we putting this feature there? Is it actually for fun, or is it just harming the player? And it really has to be about balance. It can't be all one or all the other. You're all running businesses too. So they have to balance each other. And I think that's where the involving partners and stakeholders and having conversations with people from the outsider's view as well as internally, I think just makes a big, huge difference.
Yeah, I also, if you're looking specifically at sports betting, this is a nascent market. It's only been, 4.5 years since the PASPA decision. And I think we also have to be realistic that we have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of tools, we've made great strides, and there could be hiccups along the way, but those hiccups allow us to learn and grow and evolve. This isn't stagnant. It's not as if regulation comes out and this is what we're doing. It's going to continue to change because we have a better understanding of our players and how they interact with our product and how our product, interfaces with the consumer and how we can make that a better experience. And thinking about that, and as we look to the future, I'd be curious, what is the future for RG? Where are we headed? And, what are the areas of responsible gaming that are ripe for modernization? And I'll go back to you, Charmaine, to start.
Yeah, you can talk about modern responsible gambling. I think one of the key points we've said from the outset, the collaboration will always underline all of this. You want the responsible gambling aspect to be part and parcel of regulation, a regulatory framework from the outset. You don't want to be lobbying for anything else but not for that. You will find that I think data more and more will become key to all that we're doing. But also, a better understanding of the type of data we need and we should be collating it, how we're looking at it, are we utilizing it? Because certainly we're collating or we have a lot of data at disposal when we're looking at risky play, but are we making enough use of it? Should we be making enough use of it? Probably yes. All of us, I think, in our day-to-day work talk about, policy should be based on evidence. but then let's proactively be carrying out those research and be proactively willing to share it. Let's be more transparent amongst ourselves. We might not always, like the findings, but we have to share that, because then we can quite readily say evidence for the policy, but here's this to support what we're saying. I think, as a framework per se, you have to talk about the whole customer journey. As much as there is a use of data, as much as you can have, I talked about what we can do with the likes of BetBuddy and Playtech Protect, so much can be working in the background, so the players, they're having fun while the tools are in place. But, we have new markets coming up, so you have to have the awareness. The player needs to know that they're going on those legal websites. That website has to have very clear and concise information, readily available, not complex. All the player support tools, but also the education that goes with it. We mentioned the helpline. I mean, that's quite key, that you can quite readily pick up a phone and get that information, get that help. And probably you picked up that phone at that right moment in time when you felt that moment of panic, if you like. If the phone number wasn't there and you had to write an email, you might not even go and seek that help. And the constant awareness as well. And also out there, as we said, it's just not marketing. It's marketing and responsible gambling. That's right messaging, knowing that the type of language you're using is correct. There's a lot, but there's this base that all of us have been talking about. Now it's about making it like a commonality, if you like, a common set of requirements, and let's all of us more together go with those when we want to make regulations work. Ultimately, we want to have a sustainable industry, because at the end of the day, we're businesses, as we said, and we're investing in a market. So we want to make that market work for the long run. So
all good points. Chrissy, what's a modern RG framework look like for you?
Yeah, and I think just to pick up on what Charmaine said, I think, it's so important that we normalize the dialogue. For so long, it was kind of them against us type of dialogue. And now what I'm seeing is again, going back to the collaborative kind of spirit and information and kind of sharing. One of the things that I'm so proud of is that the responsible gaming people, if you will, across the industry talk to each other. I consider them my colleagues. I work with the folks from some of the other operators, and we actually just put out 12 principles that we committed to, a handful of us. And I think it's really important that we start just normalizing the dialogue, that it isn't a finger pointing. You should be doing this, or you have to do more. I think that there are so many things that can be done, and kind of getting to Jamie's point about tackling the 800 number in her first gig at the NCPG, which I'm still fascinated by. I think, that's just a perfect example. We can tackle things, we can get things done, but we don't need to finger point. We don't need to say you're not doing this or you aren't, because as I alluded to earlier, so much is going on behind the scenes. The operators, and I'll speak for myself and the team, the RG team at DraftKings, but I know other operators feel like I do. We're doing a lot. We are passionate. We're compassionate. We understand this, and we want to really engage with not like as Charmaine said, not just the external base, but the internal base, because it really is going to bubble up from inside and then project out. So I think where I see it really opening up. I think that there are a lot of things that still can get done and need to be done, but I think by and large, we're taking the right steps. Research came up a little bit. I do think, it's really important that operators fund research, and that we really get behind the evidence-based information so that we can make wise decisions based on evidence and move forward in that progression. And sometimes it takes a little longer than other things to get done, but I do see that spirit there. And I'm just really optimistic about what the future holds for responsible gaming as kind of just part of the normalization of what an operator does, offers.
The research piece is so important because, if you look at some regulations and the brick and mortar space, it's based on what sounds good, right? Like the ATM is this far because that seems right. And, I think there's a patience required, though, because there is a lot of investment in research. I know the ICRG is doing tremendous work and has, some new funding from, partnerships with DraftKings and FanDuel and MGM and other, large gaming operators and suppliers. And but that work takes time. Research doesn't happen overnight if you want it to be, valid and scientific. So it's a little bit of learning on the go, but it's important learning that, we've proven we can adapt to and strengthen regulations and how we approach player protection when we learn more, and being okay with learning more and adapting for that. Jaime, what does a modern RG look like for you? And I know in large part that, modern PG is on the side of the helpline, but what does it look like for you?
I think so. I wrote notes before Charmaine started talking, and you said them all. Both of you said them all. So I'm going to be really wacky and think really outside the box for a minute. I support the research, the evidence, the data, all of that. And I think in the interim, on the note of research, it's lengthy, as Cait mentioned. But I think in the interim, there's so much that operators can use from other fields and what other fields have learned. Like I think about other addictions and what the tobacco control movement meant, and the regulations and the advertisement restrictions. I think there's a lot to learn from other fields that can be evidence informed while we're awaiting that long-term research. But really outside the box, I think it looks like reaching out. And collaborating, not just like Chrissy, I heard you say, like we talk, right? It used to be this operator versus this operator. I yearn for the day that it's not PG versus RG, where we can have conversations at the state level, right? You can go to the operators, we can go with you, and we'll talk together and we'll give both sides of that perspective, and we can come together to create recommendations and standards, and so that we aren't looking at a base minimum, and so that from a PR perspective, it doesn't look like a PR push. It's a collaborative effort. So I think really outside the box, modern RG, I think that's what it looks like. It looks like a partnership with problem gambling representation, gaining insight from people who are in recovery. Would this have helped when you were doing that? And I know that's a sticky situation, and that's it's touchy, and we have to be ethical about it too. But I think partnership and is where modern RG is. Now that we're growing, everybody's learning themselves, they're learning the field. I think it's time to reach out, and so that we can really get to that point where it's not PG versus RG. It's together, and we all see our places on that spectrum, and they're not as separate as people think they are.
I think inherent in that is a mutual appreciation for the roles we each play.
Absolutely.
So understanding, I might not be doing all the things that check your box on what, the AGA should be doing, or all the things DraftKings should be doing, but that we're doing things that we're working towards it. We're working towards, mutual goals of creating a sustainable marketplace and investing in the places that help get us there. The path might be different to finding that same goal, but it's, we're all on a path, and that's what matters. I know we are close to time here, so I will kind of do one last round of final thoughts as you think about what RGEM looks like and what a modern industry looks like with RG at the helm. And we'll go back around the clock. So Charmaine, what are your final thoughts here?
I like the term that Jaime picked up, using the word partnership rather than just collaboration. And no, I started off this panel mentioning, there's opportunities with new markets coming up, and again taking from European markets, where it is right now in quite a few of those markets quite difficult to go and speak with the regulator proactively. Now you nearly sort of feel that the ship has sailed kind of thing. There's so many head down kind of, it's public health angle only, we're doing our thing, we don't want to listen to you because your industry never do it right. And that's because of the media scrutiny. Does it, do we have some fault? Probably we do. Right now, we have that opportunity to go and actually share what it is we think is working. And we said, we know about research, but also about trials. Go and speak to the regulators. It's collaboration. I like the term partnership. I'll use it again, and reach out, because now is the time. I mean, there's this sort of willingness, enthusiasm about the topic, but also about regulation more broadly for online gambling. And yeah, let's make the best use of it, I say.
Chrissy, back up to you.
So I agree. I love the word partnership. And I think that, I've said it before, I think we are smarter and stronger together, right? We all bring something to the table. We all have, as you just said, Cait, we're all in different areas, but there are so many things that we've addressed today that we're all kind of concerned about and interested in doing. But I do think that, I'm seeing it more and more. I couldn't be happier with the partnerships and the collaborations I have with my colleagues at the different operators, working with organizations like the AGA and the NCPG, the ICRG. We even do work with, obviously with academic organizations as well. So I think it is, for me, I'm excited about the willingness and the openness for people to have these dialogues and not be afraid to kind of say something or talk about something that maybe somebody else in the advocacy world could help solve or resolve or help you get to another place within your infrastructure. So I'm just optimistic about it. I think that it's a great time to be thinking about and talking about and engaging with responsible gaming.
That's great. Jaime?
Well, I think thanks to these sorts of settings where we can come to the table, we can talk, we can have different perspectives. I'm, as strange as this sounds, I'm really excited about the uncomfortable conversations. I'm excited that people are feeling open enough to share viewpoints that may not agree with everybody else's, and we can kind of come to an agreement on that, right? We can come to that compromise, which might not make everybody happy, but we meet in the middle. I'm excited about creating a shared vision for helping people and talking about responsible gambling as prevention. And I think one of the takeaways, and this came up for me at the national conference when I was talking about the helpline, is, this is going to be really hard, but we can all do hard things individually and collectively and as teams and as parts. We can do hard things. It might be uncomfortable and it might be hard, but I think having those conversations and putting that out there, even with research, it can be hard, it can be daunting, it's exhausting, but we can do hard things. So I think that's what I'm most excited about, is having those difficult conversations and figuring out how to come to agreements on those. Yeah.
That's right. And bringing kind of our honest and open selves to those conversations so that they're productive and push us forward. And that's, if you think back 20 years to the Reno model, that's how this all started. You had, academics coming together to have an honest conversation about how we frame the future and establish a framework for responsible gaming. Well, we are past our time, so I want to thank our panelists for their time and insights today. And I also want to thank everyone who participated in our inaugural Responsible Gaming Education Month, whether you downloaded our toolkit, tweeted, launched a new major initiative, however you contributed to RGEM, you made a difference to advance consumer and employee education and highlight our industry's deep commitment to RG. And I am forever grateful for that participation. I hope to see you all in 2 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks at the ICRG conference and Global Gaming Expo. You can visit globalgamingexpo.com to register today. We have a really fantastic RG lineup as part of G2E. We have insights from Adam Morrington at FanDuel. We have a great session on lessons learned from lived experience, a conversation on modern RG. So it's going to be a really fantastic lineup to continue this conversation. So thanks again for you joining today and for our panelists. Have a great day and a final few days of Responsible Gaming Education Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.